Welcome to the deep dive. We got so many requests to learn more about Abu Bakr, the first caliph in Islam, so we decided to check out this lecture by Dr. Omar Suleiman.
It's a good one.
It is. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
He really gets into Abu Bakr's character, and I have to say, I was blown away by just how much more there is to this guy than just the historical figure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what really struck me was how Dr. Suleiman connected Abu Bakr's deep faith
Yeah.
with, like, all of his actions. This wasn't just someone who was going through the motions. Like, his belief in God really drove him to just be better and do more good.
Yep.
Even when, he was already promised paradise.
Wow.
It's like he was constantly raising his own bar.
That's wild, especially when you think about how much emphasis is placed on deeds in religion.
Right.
So, like, where do we even begin to unpack a life like Abu Bakr's? I mean, where do you even start with someone who's considered like one of the most exemplary figures in Islamic history?
Well, Dr. Suleiman points us right to Abu Bakr's nickname, AlSiddiq, which means the truthful. And it's not just about being honest, but rather this, like, total alignment of his thoughts and his words and all of his actions. Like, he was the embodiment of truth, which is why the Quran places people of Siddiq in this incredible category, like right between prophets and martyrs.
Whoa, okay, that is a pretty high ranking.
It is.
It really makes you think about how much weight truth held, not just as a concept, but as like an actual way of life.
For sure.
I'm curious, do other religions have figures or concepts that hold a similar position? Is this like emphasis on truthfulness unique to Islam?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, the specific ranking may be unique to, the Quranic context, but the emphasis on truth and living in accordance with it is definitely a universal theme in many, many religions.
Right.
But for Abu Bakr, this commitment to Siddiq played out in some really remarkable ways. Like, take, for example, the story of Prophet Muhammad's night journey and ascension to heaven.
Oh, right. I remember learning about that. Didn't people find it hard to believe?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, many, many people ridiculed the Prophet for sharing this experience, but Abu Bakr's immediate response was just, if he said that, then he is telling the truth.
It's interesting because that could be seen as blind faith, but Dr. Suleiman seems to argue that it was like something more than that.
Exactly. It wasn't just blind acceptance,
Yeah.
Abu Bakr's trust in Prophet Muhammad was built on years and years of observing his character.
Ah.
Like, he knew firsthand how truthful and trustworthy the Prophet was.
Okay, so it was a trust built on like experience and consistency, not just a leap of faith.
Right, exactly.
Makes sense. But Dr. Suleiman also talked about Abu Bakr making these like bold bets based on his faith. So what was that all about?
Well, this is where it gets really fascinating.
Okay.
The Quran in Surah Rum predicted the Roman Empire's eventual victory over the Persians, even though at the time the Romans were losing badly.
Really?
Yeah, and this prediction was seen as pretty far-fetched by many, maybe even more so than the night journey for some. And Abu Bakr believed so strongly in this prediction that he actually bet on it.
He did.
He did. And not just once. He made two separate bets, the first for 10 camels, and then a second, even bolder bet for 100 camels.
Wow. Talk about putting your money where your mouth is?
Right.
He must have really had like unshakable faith in the Quran's words, but did he win? It sounds like a long shot.
Well, 8 years later, the Romans did end up defeating the Persians, and Abu Bakr won both of his bets.
Wow.
Yeah. And this victory actually coincided with the Muslims' victory in the Battle of Badr, which further solidified the truth of the Quran's prediction. So it's interesting to think about the parallel there between, trusting in these seemingly impossible victories, both for the Romans and for the Muslims at Badr.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, was this just luck or like shrewd gambling, or was it something more? What can we learn from Abu Bakr's willingness to take such a risk?
That's a great question, and I think it speaks to a larger point that Dr. Suleiman makes about Abu Bakr's character. He wasn't just blindly following. He was a leader in his own right, someone who often understood things the same way as Prophet Muhammad.
Okay, so we're seeing a shift here from Abu Bakr, the devoted companion, to Abu Bakr, the leader.
Right.
What are some examples of how his leadership qualities shone through?
Well, one example Dr. Suleiman points to is the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, which to many Muslims at the time, seemed like a loss.
Okay.
The treaty had some terms that were seemingly unfavorable to the Muslims, but Abu Bakr understood the long-term benefits, like he saw the bigger picture.
Wait, hold on. For those of us who aren't like Islamic history buffs. Can you break down the Treaty of Hudaybiyah a bit?
Mhm.
What were these unfavorable terms and how did it ultimately benefit the Muslims?
Yeah, you're right. It's important to understand the context.
Yeah.
Basically, the treaty was signed between the Muslims and the Quraysh tribe in Mecca, and it was meant to bring about peace. But some of the terms seemed to favor the Quraysh.
Like what?
For example, if a person from Mecca converted to Islam and fled to Medina, they would be returned to Mecca. But if a Muslim left Medina for Mecca, they wouldn't be returned.
Yeah, okay.
And also the Muslims couldn't perform the pilgrimage that year.
Oh, so on the surface, it seemed like the Muslims were making all of these concessions,
Yeah.
and many were upset about it, but Abu Bakr saw it differently.
He did, yeah. Abu Bakr, like Prophet Muhammad, understood that this treaty would actually pave the way for the peaceful spread of Islam, and that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
The peace that followed allowed Islam to spread more rapidly than ever before.
So it's about that long-term vision, right? Being
Yeah.
able to see beyond the immediate situation and understand the potential benefits down the line.
Yes,
That's a quality we see in many, many great leaders, isn't it?
absolutely. And what's fascinating is that this strategic thinking is often intertwined with Abu Bakr's deep humility and dedication to serving others.
This is what I love about our deep dives, uncovering these seemingly contrasting qualities.
Yeah.
So, how did this humility manifest in Abu Bakr's life, especially after he became caliph?
Well, even as the leader of the Muslim community, Abu Bakr continued to perform acts of service for the most vulnerable.
Like what? Give us some specifics here. What was he actually doing?
Dr. Suleiman mentions that Abu Bakr would milk goats for widows and orphans.
Really? The caliph himself doing these like everyday chores. It's hard to imagine someone in such a position of power doing something so humble.
It is, and when people question why he continued these acts of service after becoming caliph, his response was incredibly insightful.
What did he say?
He simply said, "I don't want my position to change my good habits."
That's powerful.
It is.
It suggests that true leadership isn't about like status or power, but about service and maintaining your values regardless of your position.
Exactly. And this commitment to service extended to his relationships with other companions of the Prophet, including Omar, who is known for his own piety and commitment to justice.
Oh, Omar, the one who would later become the second caliph. It's amazing to think of these figures interacting on a like personal level.
I know, right?
What was their relationship like?
Well, Dr. Suleiman shares this anecdote where Omar actually tried to outdo Abu Bakr in charity, but he realized he just couldn't.
Wow.
It's as if Abu Bakr had set the bar so high that even someone as devout as Omar was humbled by his generosity.
So it's not just about doing good deeds, but doing them with the spirit of excellence and sincerity that was just like inherent in Abu Bakr's character.
Exactly. And this spirit is further highlighted in another story about Omar, where he secretly followed Abu Bakr to discover what he did every morning before returning to, lead the community.
Now that sounds intriguing. What was Abu Bakr up to? I'm dying to know. So spill the beans. What did Omar find out about Abu Bakr's morning routine?
Well, Omar found that Abu Bakr would secretly visit this elderly blind woman and her orphaned children.
Okay.
Every morning he would, clean their home, wash their clothes, grind wheat, bake bread, and even cook breakfast for them.
Hold on, the caliph was doing all of that secretly. It's like something out of like a heartwarming storybook.
Right.
It really puts things in perspective, I mean, how many leaders today would do something like that?
It's a pretty powerful image, isn't it?
Yeah.
Here's the leader of the entire Muslim community taking the time to care for the most vulnerable members of society, without seeking any recognition or praise.
It makes me wonder, did Abu Bakr's leadership as caliph reflect this same like commitment to justice and compassion that we see in his personal life?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Dr. Suleiman points out that Abu Bakr's actions as caliph were like a direct extension of his character.
Oh.
Remember the story about him accidentally shoving that Bedouin man?
Oh, right. The one where he was trying to maintain order during the distribution of charity. Didn't he insist on being physically struck in return?
He did, even though he was the caliph, He recognized the importance of upholding justice and equality for, everyone.
Wow, that's a powerful statement.
It is.
It would have been so easy for him to just like dismiss the incident,
Right.
But he chose to like humble himself and ensure that the principle of justice was served.
Yeah.
I think a lot of leaders today could learn from that example.
For sure. It speaks to the idea that true leadership isn't about wielding power, but about using your position to serve justice and and protect the rights of everyone, regardless of their status.
It really makes you think about how power can be used, either to elevate yourself or to elevate others.
Yeah.
Speaking of using power for good, how did Abu Bakr handle situations where he was, like, personally wrong? Yeah, I mean, everyone makes mistakes, but when you're in a leadership position, those mistakes can have, like, bigger consequences, right?
That's a great point. And Dr. Suleiman actually highlights a really poignant example of Abu Bakr's commitment to forgiveness.
Hmm.
It involves Misla, Abu Bakr's own cousin.
Misla. Wasn't he one of the people involved in spreading those false rumors about Aisha, the prophet's wife?
He was, yeah.
That must have been so incredibly painful for Abu Bakr, both as a leader and as a father.
It was, yeah. It was a deeply hurtful situation. And initially, Abu Bakr was understandably angry and vowed to stop giving Misla charity.
Okay.
But then something remarkable happened.
Okay, I have to hear this. What happened?
Well, the Quran itself addressed Abu Bakr directly, urging him to forgive and pardon Misla, reminding him that God is forgiving and merciful.
So he was essentially commanded by God to forgive. That's incredible. It shows just how seriously Islam takes the concept of forgiveness.
It does.
And Abu Bakr, without hesitation, followed this divine guidance.
He did. Yeah, not only did he forgive Misla, but he also increased his charity to him.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It must have been so incredibly difficult for him to, like, let go of that anger and hurt.
Oh, for sure.
But he chose to prioritize forgiveness and compassion even when it involves someone who had, like, wronged him so deeply.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, what motivated him to do that? Was it fear of God's punishment, or was it something more?
That's a really profound question, and I think it gets to the heart of what Dr. Suleiman is trying to convey about Abu Bakr.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about, like, outward actions or fear of punishment. It was about this deep inner certainty in God and a constant yearning to align his actions with divine principles.
So it was this inner transformation, this constant striving to, like, become better that was driving all of his actions.
Exactly. Yeah, Dr. Suleiman argues that Abu Bakr's excellence wasn't just about, like, rituals or outward displays of piety.
Okay.
It stemmed from a profound internal shift, a complete surrender to God's will, and a constant desire to just do better, to embody truthfulness and compassion in every aspect of his life.
I'm starting to see why Dr. Suleiman calls him the ultimate trendsetter, the ultimate forerunner. He wasn't just the first caliph. He was a model for how to, like, live a life of principle, integrity, and excellence.
Yeah,
Driven by a deep connection with the divine.
absolutely.
But, it's easy to get caught up in the, like, extraordinary nature of these stories and think, well, that's great for Abu Bakr, but I could never live up to that standard.
Yeah.
It can feel a bit overwhelming, to be honest.
You're absolutely right. And Dr. Suleiman anticipates this very thought. He reminds us that while Abu Bakr's life may seem exceptional, the qualities that he embodies are actually attainable for all of us, even in our own, like, seemingly ordinary lives.
So how do we do that? How do we even begin to, like, cultivate that same level of excellence and devotion in our own lives?
No. Dr. Suleiman shares a powerful insight from Imam Hassan al-Basri, a renowned scholar who lived, after Abu Bakr. And he said that Abu Bakr's excellence wasn't simply due to, like, the sheer quantity of his good deeds, like his extensive fasting or long hours of prayer.
Yeah.
It was something deeper, something that resided in his heart.
So it wasn't just about doing more, but about, like, being more.
Exactly.
What was it, something deeper that Imam Hassan al-Basri was referring to?
He said it was Abu Bakr's unwavering certainty in God's promises and his constant desire to do better. He never settled for mediocrity. He never allowed his, like, past good deeds to make him complacent.
Right.
He was always striving, always seeking to improve, to become, like, a better version of himself.
That's both inspiring and a bit intimidating, wouldn't you say?
It can be, but it's also a reminder that true excellence isn't about reaching some predefined level of perfection.
Okay.
It's about the journey, about the constant striving, the continuous self-reflection, the willingness to, learn and grow.
I like that. It takes the pressure off and makes it more about the process than the, like, destination.
Exactly. And it's a process that's available to everyone, regardless of their background, their circumstances, or their, past mistakes.
That's reassuring, but, when we talk about these lofty ideals like truthfulness, humility, compassion, and excellence, it can all feel a bit abstract.
Right.
Like, how do these qualities actually translate into our daily lives? What does it look like to, like, embody these principles in the real world?
That's where Dr. Suleiman brings it all home. Okay. He challenges us to examine our own standards and motivations.
What does he mean by that?
Well, he asks us to consider whether we're just going through the motions, doing things out of habit or social pressure, or if we're truly striving to embody these qualities in our daily interactions,
Hmm.
in our relationships, in the way we approach our work, in how we treat others, and in how we connect with, our own spirituality.
So it's about bringing those lofty ideals down to earth and finding ways to integrate them into our everyday lives.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and it's a challenge for sure, but it's also an incredibly rewarding journey.
It makes me wonder about Abu Bakr's pursuit of knowledge. Didn't Dr. Suleiman mention that he never stopped learning, even after becoming caliph?
Yes, even with all the responsibilities of leadership. Abu Bakr made time to seek out scholars and engage in discussions about Islamic teachings, which highlights the importance of continuous learning and growth, regardless of your age or status.
That's a great point. It's a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge and self-improvement should never end.
Right.
It should be like a lifelong endeavor.
Absolutely, and it's this spirit of continuous learning and growth that ultimately defines Abu Bakr's legacy.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Abu Bakr's life and legacy, what would you say is the most important takeaway for our listener today?
For me, it's the reminder that excellence is a journey, not a destination. It's about setting our own standards inspired by those who have come before us
Mhm.
and striving to embody those qualities that resonate with our own values and aspirations.
I love that.
Yeah,
It takes the pressure off of being perfect and shifts the focus to continuous growth and self-improvement.
exactly. And it's a journey that requires constant self-reflection, a willingness to challenge our assumptions, and a commitment to embodying those qualities that we admire in others, like Abu Bakr's unwavering truthfulness, humility, compassion, and pursuit of excellence.
It's a journey that I, for one, am inspired to embark on.
Yeah, it is amazing how Abu Bakr's story is both inspiring and challenging at the same time.
I know, right?
It really makes you think about your own life,
Yeah.
and ask, where am I settling for? Mediocrity. What steps can I take to, push myself further to embody those qualities that I admire in him? It's a powerful question, and I think it highlights the real value of exploring these stories of exemplary figures, right? It's not just
Yeah.
about gaining knowledge, it's about sparking inspiration,
Yeah.
finding a guide for our own personal journeys of growth and self-discovery.
For sure. And I think what makes Abu Bakr's story so compelling is that he wasn't born into this exceptional role.
Yeah.
He was just an ordinary man who, through his unwavering commitment to his faith and his constant striving for excellence, became an extraordinary leader and, human being.
Yeah, he wasn't a prophet. He didn't receive divine revelations or anything. He was someone who, through his own choices, his own actions, his own dedication to, self-improvement,
Hmm.
rose to become one of the most respected figures in Islamic history.
It's a reminder that we all have that potential within us, that capacity for greatness, regardless of our circumstances.
For sure.
But it's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
It requires effort, dedication, and a willingness to, constantly push ourselves beyond our comfort zones.
Exactly. And I think that's where the idea of setting our own standards comes in, right?
Yeah.
Abu Bakr didn't wait for others to tell him what was good enough.
Right.
He was constantly raising his own bar, driven by his desire to please God and to fulfill his potential as a human being.
It's like he was competing with himself, always striving to do better than he did yesterday.
Yeah.
I wonder, do you think that's something that's missing in our culture today? This sense of personal accountability, of striving for excellence for its own sake and not for external validation or reward.
That's a really thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
I think in today's world, it's so easy to get caught up in comparisons, in external measures of success. We're just bombarded with all of these images of perfection and achievement.
Right.
And it can be really easy to lose sight of our own internal compass, our own personal definition of excellence.
So how do we get back to that? How do we cultivate that inner drive, that commitment to personal excellence in a world that often celebrates superficiality and instant gratification?
I think it starts with, recognizing that true excellence is an internal journey. It's a lifelong process of self-discovery and growth.
Okay.
It's about identifying those qualities that we admire, those values that resonate with, our core beliefs, and then making a conscious effort to embody them in our thoughts, words, and actions.
And maybe it's about shifting our focus away from like what other people are doing, away from those external measures of success, and
Yeah.
instead focusing on just becoming like the best version of ourselves,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like for each of us,
Exactly. It's about finding our own unique path, setting our own standards, and striving for excellence, not for, recognition or reward, but for the sake of like fulfilling our potential and making a positive impact on the world around us.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
It's a reminder that true excellence isn't about, perfection. It's about progress.
right.
It's about taking those small steps each day to become a little bit better, a little bit kinder, a little bit more compassionate, a little bit more aligned with, our values.
And remembering that this journey of like, self-improvement is a lifelong endeavor. There's no finish line.
Hmm.
There's always room for growth, for learning, for becoming like more of who we're meant to be.
Well said. So as we leave our listener with a final thought,
Yeah.
I'm reminded of something that Dr. Suleiman said towards the end of his lecture. He urged us to ask ourselves this very specific question. What step can I take today, however small, to move closer to embodying those qualities that I admire in Abu Bakr's life?
That's a powerful question to like ponder.
Yeah, it is.
It invites us to take action, to translate these inspiring stories into, tangible steps towards our own personal growth.
Exactly. So whether it's committing to an act of service, seeking out knowledge, or simply, reflecting on our own standards and motivations, I encourage you, dear listener, to take that first step today.
Who knows what incredible journey awaits you?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep seeking, keep striving, and keep diving deep.